Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Themes video series. I'm Emma Nugent, Information Sharing Project Officer at the Centre for Excellence in Child and Family Welfare. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. For me, it's the Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here. I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. The Emerging Themes video series seeks to deliver complex information and topics related to the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment and Management Framework, also known as MARIM, and the information sharing schemes through interesting and easily digestible presentations and conversations. This video series is funded through the MARIM Framework Sector Capacity Building Project. Today we're hearing from Larisa Freiverts, Team Leader and Senior Family Therapist of the Meridian Youth and Family Therapy Team at Anglicare. Larisa Freiverts is a clinical family therapist with 20+ years experience working in the community sector. Larisa has specialised in working with adolescents and their families with a key focus on trauma and the impacts of violence in relationships. Larisa has many years experience in clinical work, group facilitation, teaching and training, and brings to her work great knowledge, skills and passion. Larisa has been the team leader and senior practitioner of the Anglicare Victoria Meridian Youth and Family Therapy Team since 2009. The Meridian Youth and Family Therapy Team is a specialist adolescent service which provides support to young people aged 10 to 23 years and their families. The team consists of trained social workers, psychologists, and family therapists who have a strong emphasis on systemic work and particular expertise in the area of adolescent violence in the home. The team provides general counselling and family therapy, intensive family support and complex case management, therapeutic group work programs, secondary consultation and education, and training and workshops. Today, Larisa will be speaking about working with children and young people who have experienced relational trauma. Thank you, Larisa. Hi, thank you for tuning into the Emerging Themes video series. I'm Emma Nugent, Information Sharing Project Officer at the Centre for Excellence in Child and Family Welfare. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. For me, it's the Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here. I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. The Emerging Themes video series seeks to deliver complex information and topics related to the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment and Management Framework, also known as MARIM, and the information sharing schemes through interesting and easily digestible presentations and conversations. This video series is funded through the MARIM Framework Sector Capacity Building Project. Today we're hearing from Larisa Freiverts, Team Leader and Senior Family Therapist of the Meridian Youth and Family Therapy Team at Anglicare. Larisa Freiverts is a clinical family therapist with 20+ years experience working in the community sector. Larisa has specialised in working with adolescents and their families with a key focus on trauma and the impacts of violence in relationships. Larisa has many years experience in clinical work, group facilitation, teaching and training, and brings to her work great knowledge, skills and passion. Larisa has been the team leader and senior practitioner of the Anglicare Victoria Meridian Youth and Family Therapy Team since 2009. The Meridian Youth and Family Therapy Team is a specialist adolescent service which provides support to young people aged 10 to 23 years and their families. The team consists of trained social workers, psychologists, and family therapists who have a strong emphasis on systemic work and particular expertise in the area of adolescent violence in the home. The team provides general counselling and family therapy, intensive family support and complex case management, therapeutic group work programs, secondary consultation and education, and training and workshops. Today, Larisa will be speaking about working with children and young people who have experienced relational trauma. Thank you, Larisa.
Hi there. So welcome everybody. Before I begin, I guess I want to say that this is a huge topic, and so we'll just be covering some kind of core components around working with families and young people, children impacted by trauma. And with that, I want to come from a position of an awful lot of hope that what I want to say and bring across is that healing is possible, and that our models of attachment, are really formed in communication and connection with our caregivers and shapes how we think, feel, remember and behave. And it's our attachment styles that should be a guide and not a roadmap or seen as an unchangeable life sentence for people. And it really is that through attachment, that's our foundation of a healthy mind and body, and that people have a sense of feeling seen, safe, soothed and secure, and that we can earn our secure attachment. So a big part of our role is that we interact with clients, that we're being with them can really help create a template for safety and for trust, and it's from here that they begin to learn how to have better relationships, and that we all have a remarkable ability to heal and change. And it's important that we meet our clients with an open mind and not hold any limited beliefs about their potential for healing. With that in mind, you know, attachment really is kind of a model. We see it when children run to their parents for safety and support, and safety really is necessary for children to thrive and to develop. And it's via the parent that children learn about the world and themselves, and that's called intersubjectivity. For me, it's that sense of that intersubjectivity refers to that reciprocal relationship between a parent and a child, and this is a mind-to-mind interaction where the parent and the child are open to one another, receptive to and sharing of each other's experience of self, other and the world. And we know that trauma can get in the way and results in blocked care, and this is when either the parent or the child shifts from openness to defensiveness. Intersubjectivity has three core components: shared emotion and affect, and shared attention, and shared intention, so that the parent wants to know the child and the child wants to be known. Dan Hughes' work is key here, and he shows that when we help parents stay regulated and help parents repair relationships, that we need to build the core elements of intersubjectivity, and Dan Hughes describes that as PACE, so the ability for parents to be playful, accepting, curious and empathic, and that we as practitioners can also promote a sense of safety by how we are with clients, that our attitude is just as important and needs to be characterised by PACE, that we are also playful, accepting, curious and empathic. And if we look at neuroscience and polyvagal theory, and that is that we are coming from a place of calm and connection ourselves. The first steps, I think, of working with trauma is that we're recognising the living legacy of trauma. You know, that trauma manifests in intense physical, perceptual and emotional reactions to everyday things. That we have clients that have implicit memories that are evoked or triggered, or what I call, you know, they step on landmines every single day that keeps on bringing the trauma alive in their bodies and their emotions again and again. And that most of our clients will have problems with regulation of emotions and impulses, of memory and attention issues, of self-perception, relationship, body sensations and meanings. So some of the questions that we might ask would be, when you look at these symptoms and difficulties, which one do you recognise in yourself or have you had in the past? Or how do your feelings about yourself change if you see these problems and symptoms as a living legacy of trauma? And if you chose one symptom and asked yourself, how did depression help me get through? Or how did it help to want to die? Or how did drug use, cutting, eating disorder help me cope? So a big part of looking at trauma is that we will protect ourselves from being hurt. And there's two key ways in which all of us try to protect ourselves from being hurt again. One is that we try to prevent the pain or prevent from being triggered. And the other is that we stop the pain. So this is our reaction when we have been triggered. And this is often the problems and symptoms that a lot of our clients show when they come for support or are looking for support. So this will be around the binging, the purging, the cutting, the suicidal thoughts, the substance abuse, the numbing out, and the dissociation. When we look at trauma, I think it's helpful to make some distinctions that there are various types of trauma, and as a result also various responses or treatments that can help people recover. If we're looking at more simple trauma, I think that we're looking at those that have maybe had just an acute trauma as like a car accident. Typically, the issues would resolve within a month or so. PTSD will often be where a person will be reliving the event, avoiding the situation that reminded them of the incident. There'll be levels of hyperarousal, but it will often come with that sense of holding a negative feeling about yourself. But when we start looking at complex or relational trauma, so this is where trauma has happened in the context of relationships, then for them, there has been something that's either happened or hasn't happened to a client, and this has caused harm and actually affects how they view themselves and their relationships. And relational trauma involves physical, sexual and emotional abuse, neglect and abandonment. But it can also be the lack of mirroring and attunement by a caregiver, the unconscious absorption of a parent's trauma, early loss of a parent, or a parent with a mental illness, physical illness or drug and alcohol abuse. And if we're looking at developmental trauma, then it's really looking at when the trauma occurs during various developmental stages, and that the timing and exposure and the number of exposures and severity of those traumas during sensitive periods can have a huge impact. At the most extreme end, is that we know that post-traumatic stress disorder has a dissociative component, and the most extreme presentation of that is dissociative identity disorder. So I kind of say that we have a small t trauma or simple trauma. Doesn't mean it's simple to treat, but these are often clients that value relationships and have integrated their past and present experiences. So there'll be a level of secure attachment, and they often will hold a belief that the trauma had happened to them, but isn't all of them. So there's a separation of the experience in the self. And with these clients, you can typically find that there is a clear timeline of events. You can ask the question around, when was the first time you can remember feeling this way? Or if we were to map some memories, where's your first memory and most distressing memory or a recent memory? And often the belief that they would hold about themselves will be I'm vulnerable, I'm powerless, and I'm responsible. In comparison, when we're looking at big T traumas, so the complex relational, developmental and extreme traumas, then we'll often have clients that present really in a fragmented way. There will be no clear timelines, and there will be a profusion of traumatic memories. And that these memories in some way will form the groundwork under the client's core beliefs. This feeling of being personally responsible and their sense of self and self-esteem will be really impacted. So often they'll hold beliefs of I am something wrong, I am nothing, I am unlovable, and I am bad, and my experiences prove this. So a big part of recovery or the job that we have is often around how do we begin to help our clients earn their secure attachment so that they have a sense of, you know, having value in relationships, of being able to be flexible and objective when they talk about their pasts, that they've made sense of their histories, and that they can anticipate the future with some insight, relatedness and emotional nuance. Unfortunately, this might not be the client group that we see very often. Some of the questions that we might ask to begin to explore a family member's attachments or attachment experiences might be to ask, Tell me 5 words that describe your relationship with your caregiver and why you chose them. And who has been a nurturing person in your life? When you were little and upset, what would you do? What would others do? Do you remember being physically hurt or ill? And what would happen? And did you ever feel rejected as a child? And why do you think your parents behaved as they did during your childhood? If we look at avoidant and dismissive attachment, then these are clients who had parents who were unresponsive or neglectful. So they grew up with little interpersonal attunement or connection, and they learnt to give up and take care of themselves and hold a belief that they can't depend on humans to meet their needs. They are often not very connected to their emotions or their bodies and are therefore cut off from themselves and from others. They will typically not recall their childhood except in the most matter-of-fact manner, so they rely a lot on logic. Commonly, they would hold this kind of negative beliefs about themselves that they can't trust people, that closeness isn't safe, that it's not safe to be vulnerable, it's not safe to have feelings or needs, and you need to be in control. So, and what you'll often hear these clients saying is, I don't really remember my childhood, but it was fine. Or when it comes to engaging with services, it's I'm here because I have to be, not because I want to be. When it comes to treating those that sit within this kind of preference or style, then treatment really needs to be focused on right brain activation. So this is around focusing on nonverbal signs and increasing body awareness and exploring memories of being connected to other people and practitioners. So you might say to them, how was that for you when you felt seen and understood by me? And what did you notice in your body? And when it comes to us as professionals, it will often be really helpful if we are relaxed in our posture and in our face and that we don't work too hard. So leaning back a little bit probably will be helpful. And that our language connects in a way, you know, about kind of saying, let's share some ideas. Let's talk about the science behind something, or let's look at the pros and cons to kind of connect in the first instance to the logic that they prefer. When we're looking at anxious attachment, then really these are clients who've had parents who are inconsistent and unavailable or rejecting. So they have anxiety about whether or not others will be available to them. And in some cases, they might have had parents that were really intrusive. So they might hold fears of being taken over by others. They'll often have a real difficulty self-soothing, and there will be a huge amount of shame, that sense that there is something wrong with me. The common negative beliefs that they'll often find will be that sense that I will be rejected and hurt. I'm not good enough. I must demand for my needs to be met, and nobody understands my pain. So with these clients, how they will present is they'll often be seeking lots of reassurance through calls and texts. There'll be a lot of interfering behaviours and symptoms related to intense feelings. There'll be lots of cancelled sessions as they are responding to their anxiety or anger. And they will often be saying, you're not listening to me, or I need longer or more sessions, or I will never get better. So when it comes to treating those with anxious attachment, then, you know, it's going to bring up a lot for us as practitioners. We're going to feel pretty frustrated, overwhelmed, inadequate, or maybe a little bit angry. And what will be really helpful will be to say, although I can't meet your needs exactly, here is what I can do. Or your feelings about this situation matter to me. Here's what I hear you saying. Is that right? So a lot of the focus of intervention needs to be around skill work. So tools around calming anxiety, about self-soothing, soothing self-criticism and shame, developing self-talk, and countering negative thoughts that often undermine their everyday life. When we're looking at disorganized attachment, this is where a client has had a parent or a caregiver whose behavior has been overwhelming, frightening, or chaotic. So their source of comfort has also been their source of terror. So they have suffered significant childhood traumas, which have caused internal fragmentation and disconnection from themselves and others. So a lot of the time their left brain is offline and they're pretty dissociated, and their unresolved, unprocessed traumas leave their memories, emotions and body sensations in a really unintegrated and chaotic state. So these are clients that really, really struggle. Some might be desperate for connection while others will avoid connection at all cost. The core negative beliefs that you will find with these clients is that sense of I must be close to feel safe, but being close to anybody will make me feel unsafe, or others will hurt me or reject me. It's not safe to feel safe. There's no way of avoiding this fear and anxiety. It's not safe to remember, and it's not safe to feel. And our interactions with clients with this kind of trauma background is that they'll often misinterpret what you're saying, and you'll see quick shifts from expressions of need and affection to withdrawal, anger and hurt. When it comes to treatment, there needs to be a lot of stabilization before processing trauma can occur. They need to develop a stable and secure therapeutic relationship, and trust will be really, really difficult to establish. So for us as practitioners, we're going to really have to help them regulate by us staying grounded, spacious and compassionately attuned to them, but also really holding on to the hope that there's capacity to heal from trauma, that we don't need to be pillars of relational health ourselves, but we can really support our clients in their journey. And this work is really tricky, sticky and hard, because it does and will activate our own relational histories and wounds and challenge us in a deep and personal way. But I think that our therapeutic relationship is incredibly important, and we need to show that we can handle their pain and are safe and trustworthy. So how we engage needs to be really tentative, and that we need to slow things down. So the things that we might say is, if it's okay, I'd really, really like to ask some questions so I can get a really good understanding of your feelings. And can we talk about what things I have said or done and what has been helpful and unhelpful? On an additional note, I really kind of want to express that when it comes to clients that have experienced neglect, this is something that I think is often underdealt with, and something that is really, really hard to identify and heal. Because we have clients that have grown up with a lack of connection. So it's really difficult to work with the absence of something. And I often find that these are clients that present as highly intellectual. There's lots of thinking and analysing, but underneath that, it often is filling a void for the absence of love, care, and being noticed. And these are clients that often don't have access to a lot. It's kind of like there's nothing there. So you're often having to work and to begin your work with body sensations. And I think that also with these clients, you're going to hit enormous sadness and grief. And I think these clients will protect against feeling this sadness as much as possible. So it's got a particular kind of presentation. This is my summary of just a small part of resourcing that's helpful and trauma recovery options that are available for clients. So when we're talking about resourcing, it's really around kind of when we're working at the frontal lobe level, the talking kind of level. And it's around being able to help clients recognise the impact and legacy of trauma, around dealing with triggers, around understanding the traumatised brain, body awareness, self-care, naming feelings and negative beliefs, containment and mindfulness practice, attending to shame and blame, and building empathy, trust and pride. And when it comes to trauma recovery, you know, the core ones that I find are really, really helpful are things like EMDR. So this really helps clients heal, and affect and body are central, and the therapist has a neutral kind of stance. Internal family systems, this is where your client goes inside and finds and feels their parts. And somatic psychotherapies, this is a real bottom-up, body-focused therapy that can address implicit memories and really prioritizes the therapeutic relationship. And I think that when it comes to children and young people, then animal-assisted and art therapies can be extraordinarily helpful. When we come to talking about resourcing and recovery from trauma, and I think a big part of it is around recognizing the importance of integration. That integration is the fundamental mechanism between adaptive and healthy regulation of affect, attention, memory, and social interactions. And when we examine various mental disorders, you can almost describe all of them as clusters of chaotic or rigid symptoms that are part of impaired integration. And really it's secure attachment that provides the relational experiences that stimulate activation and growth of integrative fibers of the brain. So that brain-to-brain work that we do becomes a really important mechanism for healing. And we know that trauma impacts the autonomic nervous system, and that when our autonomic nervous system has been shaped by trauma, then people's responses and their patterns are biased towards protection and survival rather than connection and social engagement. So you will see that people live in a habitual sympathetic activation, while others might be in a habitual dorsal vagal immobilization. So with that in mind, we have to hold in mind that neuroception and so the polyvagal theory is really around how we respond to cues of safety and danger, and that it's inside the body, outside the environment, and between people. And that neuroception accurately answers that question of, in this moment, am I safe or am I in danger? I like that kind of notion that actually this is about the flow of energy across all our bodies and relationally, that our bodies are really quite porous, and that we have an extraordinary ability to move from health, growth and restoration to defense when we need to be, and that we have a system, we kind of have a brain that exists around our head, our heart and our stomachs. So as a resource, helping people understand and befriend their autonomic nervous system becomes really, really important to be able to recognize those shifts. So when you're in a sympathetic, a fight-flight state, some questions we might ask a client is, when does your body become activated, angry, frustrated, annoyed, mad or stressed? And what or who makes you fight, flight, come online? And if you look at social engagement, so when we're in our ventral vagal state, in our compassion nerve, and we can be calm and safe, we might ask the question of, when does your body feel safe, calm and connected? And what does it look like on your face and in your body when you feel safe and connected? And when you are in shutdown, so in the dorsal vagal state, you're in life threat and you're overwhelmed and there's no escape. This is where despair and hopelessness and disconnection lives. We might ask our clients, when does your body become really shut down, flat, withdrawn, alone, like no one's there? And what did you do to get back to feeling okay again? So when you're looking at sympathetic activation, so that sense of being in flight or flight, you don't have a lot of access to rational thinking because your prefrontal cortex is temporarily offline. So often it will be that state of high emotion and increased physical sensations without the ability to calm down. So to help our clients calm down, top-down strategies might be to try to make sense of your reaction, to validate your experience and to put your feelings into words, and clearly and calmly and compassionately being able to tell yourself that you can recover from this temporary overwhelm. So to be able to say, I know I will not be here forever, and I will be able to feel differently very soon. And when we come to parasympathetic blunting, so that freeze state, we have a overly active prefrontal cortex, and the parasympathetic nervous system gets activated, giving a person really little access to thoughts, feelings, or physical sensations. This really requires bottom-up strategies to recover from. So what you might ask or do is to try to bring back your physical sensations back online. So you might say, can you move your fingers? Can you wiggle your toes? And next you might then say, do you have access to your emotions? What are you feeling right now? And the importance of slowing things down and reminding yourself, I am in control, and blunting takes longer to recover from compared to activation, but I am okay. So these are just some small resources that just really help with resilience and well-being. So that sense of being able to be flexible in navigating your autonomic hierarchy, and knowing that a lot of suffering happens when we get into survival responses and get stuck there. And a lot of our well-being comes from recovering from moments of dysregulation and being able to connect with resources that help us feel calm and settled. So when it comes to some of the resources that we can teach our clients, a lot of them are around enlivening those feelings of safety and calmness. So when I think about safety, then really it's around recognizing an awful lot of our clients with attachment wounds did not feel safe growing up. And that creating safety for our clients is often around how we are ourselves, that we allow our clients to explore that which has been forbidden or too frightening. And we implicitly create safety when we exhibit a sense of being non-judgmental, empathically attuned, and reassuring that we can manage their strong affect, thoughts, feelings, and to give that real message that you don't need to re-experience what's been happening to you, and what do you need to feel safe or safe enough. And I will say that if we're afraid of our client's strong affect and we're not confident in our client's capacity to heal, that we too will communicate this to our clients, and they will feel unsafe. And it's really important that we attune to our clients, that they don't feel alone like they did when they were originally hurt. So we really need to trust the process, and to recognize that safety is not something an individual can summon on their own. Safety is being able to trust those around you want to protect you from harm. So this really falls into the importance of the therapeutic relationship. Catharsis is really unhelpful. Remembering an intimidating, demoralizing, and frightening or overwhelming event does not change the effect of such an experience. When we create a safe, attuned relationship in which we hold the shame, the hurt, the trauma, and the associated feelings and impulses without punishing or censoring our clients, then we facilitate a corrective emotional experience for them. This is the right brain to right brain connection that changes our clients' brains. And a lot of what we're needing to do when we're trying to teach parents to manage their troubled kids, for example. And with that, we have to recognize that fear will get in the way, our clients and our own. So there will always be fear of overwhelm. There will be fear of losing the ability to protect themselves and what they know, that if they go to their traumas, that other memories and experiences will be triggered, that they'll be judged, that they can't handle the pain, and that we as practitioners can't handle the pain, and that they might not be able to handle the change, or fear that they will fail. So the critical parts will always emerge. emerge. And reliving is not safe. So I always say that it must be a little at a time, and it must be a sliver of a memory. So some of the questions we might ask might be, if you stopped drinking, being anxious, suicidal, what would happen? And what are you afraid will happen? And I think a big part of our job as practitioners is to give that message that we will not rush things, that we won't force change, that we will ask for permission and be transparent, and we will validate their experiences and acknowledge all the ways that they have survived and protected themselves, and instill confidence and trust that they and we can deal with the overwhelm. You know, that we want to hear everything you are holding, but a little bit at a time. And when we think about our role as practitioners, we also have to consider the role of the client in healing themselves. That relational wounds often need healing from both inside and outside, so that the wounds that the clients have need empathy and compassion from other people, but also need empathy and compassion from themselves. So the client's self needs to hold space, that client's self needs to witness what they have experienced and to feel what they have experienced. And that trauma really blocks the self and that loving presence, which heals their trauma. So our job is not to fill the space, but to hold the space so that the clients can be with themselves. And finally, that a big part of being able to do that is around recognizing the huge negative beliefs about self that clients have. That's what trauma gifts them, I would say. So really encouraging and teaching that skill of noticing is an important resource. So to notice a feeling instead of reacting to it, or drawing a conclusion or assigning blame is really, really calming. So for example, noticing shame, sadness, anxiety or anger without judgment or interpretation has a calming effect. Bringing attention to the choked up feeling in the throat, the wetness or tears in the eyes, and the emotional pain in the chest is calming. And to notice the sensation of pain rather than recalling all the experiences that have caused the pain is calming. And if we notice the tears instead of interpreting them as weakness, then it will subside much more easily than if we try to choke them back. And whenever we notice a feeling as just a feeling or a thought as just a thought, it is generally less overwhelming. Thank you.
Thank you, Larisa, for such an insightful and informative presentation. I think it's such a complex space where comprehensive support is so crucial, and you've certainly provided such a valuable discussion on how practitioners can work to ensure that young people who have experienced traumas are being supported effectively. So thank you for that. To find more information and resources about Merrim and the information sharing schemes, please see the Centre's Merrim Information Sharing Resource Hub. Thank you again for your presentation, Larisa, and thank you for our viewers for tuning in.